then there is another thing that I think is quite clear in Europe. Sweden hasn't been in war since 1809. We have had 200 years of peace. So this is a new situation for us to have combat troops in the country. But there is even in small countries like ours, there's a military complex, you could say. There's the interest of the military itself. And of course, every country that has a military wants to test it. And all the countries in Europe, they have special units like special forces. And there is kind of an excitement inside the military to be able to be in real combat. So there is a push from the military itself, I would say, to take part of this, because they want to be like the other big guys out there and take part. But this, of course, is a very dangerous impulse in a society that has to be sort of pushed back by the democratic structures in the society. So what's happening now is that the argument for having our troops there is less and less convincing. But on the other hand, the US is putting more and more pressure on the European allies to send more and more troops. And Sweden is one of the countries that have responded to double our force in Afghanistan. Some other countries have refused, like Spain. And some other countries have a more intense debate, like Germany and Norway, about the irresponsible in answering to the US call for more troops. So it's becoming an issue. In Sweden, we have the situation that we have national elections next year. And now we have a conservative government, which we normally don't have, but now we have it. And we are discussing to form a government which should be the left party that I belong to, the Social Democrats and the Greens. And this is the main obstacle in foreign policy is Afghanistan. Because we want to withdraw, the Social Democrats want to stay, and they also have an internal opposition. The same goes for Germany, the same goes for Norway. So this is becoming a domestic, difficult issue for the left wing, as we have different analyses. Of course, we often meet the argument, okay, it's easy to criticize. You now put up all these arguments against this war, but what is the alternative? If we simply withdrew, wouldn't the Taliban take over the country again, and it would get even worse? And of course, this is a very legitimate point. We have to be willing and able to answer this question. What is our alternative to the present situation? First of all, I think the first alternative has to be to break this development of militarization of the conflict and to withdraw the troops. I think that has to be part of any sustainable solution. That should not mean that we should leave Afghanistan. That should, on the other hand, mean that we should put the money we now put at our military, which is 1 billion Swedish kronor a year, that's $150 million or so, into civilian reconstruction, of course, in the country. And we have this legacy of working with the Afghans themselves that makes us uniquely equipped, I would say, to do this for the Afghans. We've done it for a number of years. What's happening now is the opposite, that we connect our civil aid, development aid, to the military aid. And we invest more money in the province where we have our troops to make kind of PR for them. But that also makes our aid workers the targets of the Taliban. And we must sort of disconnect the two sides of the help and withdraw the troops, as I say. Thirdly, there is no alternative in Afghanistan to a national dialogue. There is no alternative to sitting down and speaking with the Taliban. You can say whatever you like about them, and I can say many bad things about the Taliban, that's for sure. But there is no way around to have a dialogue with the Pashtuns, that is the majority group. And that is happening. The government in Afghanistan is having direct contacts. Saudi Arabia has been one of the providers that met at several occasions. And you should not say that Taliban and Al-Qaeda is the same. There are clear tensions between those two. And also that inside the Taliban, there are a lot of fractions. Some are more pragmatic, some are more militant, some are allowing education also for women in the provinces they control, some don't. And of course, the moment you sit down and the moment you open the window for a non-military solution, you have the opportunity to try to make a deal with maybe not all the Taliban, but big fractions of the Taliban to be included in a peace process. And I think that this has to be under the umbrella of the United Nations, not of the United States. And of course, There is an election coming up in Pakistan, in Afghanistan now, the 20th of August. And one of the big questions is that how many provinces will be able to hold an election at all with the present situation. It's getting worse and worse in many provinces. And I think that the upcoming election makes the need for national dialogue urgent, because it would be a big failure if people in the big Pashtun provinces couldn't vote. Because that will mean that the government that will come out of this process will have very little legitimacy in these provinces. So I would say that the elections also are an opportunity to have a dialogue with the Pashtuns and try to provide for them to be part of the election. And I think regardless of how you look on the occupation, to try to make the elections as fair and free as possible must be an important aim. And then of course this which I should wind up now. What I haven't mentioned is the connection to Pakistan, and that makes it a lot more complicated. And of course the US more and more is dragged into a warlike situation in Pakistan. And this is getting complicated by the fact that the Pakistani security service has been one of the main supporters of the Taliban, and maybe still is. I mean, Pakistan is formally an ally of the US, while the security service is conducting a policy of its own, totally. And of course, this makes it a lot more complicated. But I see no alternative to peace and a non-military solution. And I think with putting pressure on our governments from the left wing in Europe and forcing one after one to withdraw, as we did with Iraq, is putting the momentum on the right side, also on the US, to find alternative solutions. Thank you.